Welcome to the Aquarian Cauldron.
Sacred musings between three Aquarians seeding divine consciousness.
Take a seat, darling. The cauldron is bubbling, and so it begins.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our sacred space this week that may also get a little bit fiery this week. We'll see with the wild woman conversation. But before we get into it, we want to do our soul reflections. How has the month been for all of us? And from there, we'll get into the topic. But I think what I want to share for me is this past month of July, since we last recorded an episode, I've been living into some shadow work that's been rising up. Thankfully it's not anything crazy, but it has been like these little moments where I'll sit with that and be like, oh, that doesn't feel good. I don't like that. And a lot of it's within myself. I'll see myself react in a certain way or say something I don't resonate with anymore. I'm like, why am I doing that? And it's been really reflective with myself to acknowledge these shadows and be like, okay, that's cool. I can release it now. And it's really not that big of a deal. Whereas before, the shadows coming up like that would kind of knock me on the ground for a little bit. And I'd like, I'd have the emotions, I'd cry through it, I'd get angry or whatever it was. But this time it was very more subdued. And I think it's cool that it mirrors that my tarot card for the month is the Devil, which is shadow work. So each month we do a tarot. This is something Erica introduced us to, and this month for me was the Devil. And as soon as July came through, it was like, whoa, no joke, this is the Devil, because a few days into July it's started and it hasn't stopped. And so, but it is calming down now, and it feels really good to have integrated it all. Honestly, I feel more empowered and I feel more ready to claim like the energy that's coming starting today with the nodal shifts, which we'll talk more about too, that shift today from into Aquarius and Leo. And yeah, that's been my month in a quick summary. How about you, Erica?
It's been bananas, but good. Coming into July, we had the Capricorn energy coming in, and it like grounded me a lot more. And I was like, okay, I can breathe. A lot of activity leading up to it, the Gemini energy before. I can breathe. Yay. So I calmed down. I got focused. I had a lot of work stuff to do. I had to focus on that and kick general ass like all over what I do in my day hours. And then at the end of that, I was pretty spent, to be honest. I mean, I had to put so much energy into staying grounded for everybody else and be productive and be everybody else. So on the 14th, we had the new moon in Cancer. And the month before, I had booked a Reiki session with my girl in town, Chakra, and she was like, let's do it. Now I had the most extraordinary experience doing a Reiki session, and given that my cards for the month were, it was Lovers and then Alchemy of Reunion, I got a total realignment, a level 1 attunement, and I never felt better. Like, it was everything I needed, especially it was in Cancer. It aligned all my emotional center, and I've been light as air since. And yeah, it's great. Just yay.
It's amazing.
It was great. I needed it. Been decades since I had one, and now we're going to do regular every 3 months. And I'm just working with new energy, and just made my month. You know, I handled the stress better. I handle other people better. Like you're saying, Alicia, like being aware of your reactionary tendencies, like whatever patterns you have, I started to pay attention to it and going, no, I don't need to be reactionary. Why don't you say okay instead of why or whatever it was? And life has been much more smooth. So it's been pretty good. Improvements, much improved. And Renelle, I believe you had some things going on.
When don't I?
Always, girl, always.
Always. Doing swords here. It felt like that for me. For this past month, July, the card you pulled for me was the Hierophant, Taurus energy, and there is a lot of groundedness there, and I feel like that's, part of my journey for the past month is, a remembering of that and being able to share that with others. I feel like the more that I use my voice, the more I'm healing, which, some people say you're always going to heal, but, there are some aspects that, you kind of graduate from. And then you say, oh, yeah, no, I haven't finished that one yet. I'm going to put you over there. I think overall it's kind of been just like a roller coaster. I've noticed everyone in my network is going through their own bit of clearing out and shadow work and, helping others to see that, oh, yes, this is what you're going through. It's okay. Just take a breath, step back. And then I also, when I say this, it's mirroring back to myself. Okay, it's okay. Just take a deep breath. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think, let's see, I know the last time we spoke, it was about, feeling like light as a feather, and it kind of changed. The energy for me was, just being aware of, everyone else, and what they're going through, and being, sympathetic, patient with them. It's kind of hard in the moment, but, when you're in the flow state, you're like, I got this. I know what's going on. And, having people there for you to support you, like both of you have, and it just it's great. I find it, fulfilling, wholesome.
Mhm. Yeah, I've noticed my community suffering, a lot of heartache and just general trials. And it was like 2 weeks ago. It was right after I had my attunement, and I was there, our local hangout, and everything was just bad. Like everyone, the mood, just everything was just unpleasant. And instead of staying in it, my friend and I just left. Like, you know what? None of this is ours. We supported them what we could do without getting personally involved, and we left. And then we took the week off and we stayed in this week instead and just took a breath. And it was what we needed. So we could still feel light as a feather, so we could be there for our families and our community. It's like, you know what? None of this is ours. We're taking a moment. You know where to find us. So that's kind of what we did. And
Okay.
yeah.
Well, so I will say this, there's a lot of chaos out there. You can name it what you want, but I think, I find myself repeating this. There are two major timelines. It's either love or fear. And which one are we going to choose? It's pretty simple, but how do you separate yourself? It's you be the observer, just observe, be above the chaos, choose which battles you want to fight. I mean, is it really worth it, guys?
Mm-hmm.
What is it? What is it? What are you gaining from it? Anyway.
Exactly. We were like, you know what? This has been the same drama for a long time, and we out. Like, good luck with that. And that's everywhere, not just that one night. We went to another place after. It was the same mood, and we were like, you know what? And we chose love, right? What saved the whole night was playing with a puppy for like 40 minutes. And it was the best moments of my life. And I'm like, bubble of love. Like, forget what's going on there. Look, we got a puppy who loves us and kisses us. And, it was just like, that's what made it. And we're like, oh, save the night, that cute little puppy. And that we chose love. We chose self-care. If we're not okay, we cannot heal others.
I think that's exactly what the shift is calling us to right now. It's like no longer are we there to take care of everybody else. And that's exactly what this wild woman energy is about. It's like, it's time to focus in on myself, because when I'm focused in on myself and that self-care, automatically the people around me are going to be taken care of. So this shifts us into the wild woman conversation. Because I had always intuitively known about the wild woman, and I have a journal full of notes for my next novel that I want to write that included some notes on the triple goddess that came through. And I immediately just sensed, I'm like, why isn't the wild woman here? And I just remember I made some notes about the four-pillared goddess. I'm like, what if it was just the four-pillared goddess? I just made something up. And then I left it there. And then it's just been kind of in the background all these years since then. And so when I actually went to do the research on the wild woman, where did it come from? I'm expecting it to take me way back to like ancient tradition or something. But the most predominant thing is this book called The White Goddess, published in 1948 by a man named Robert Graves. He's the one that kind of popularized the triple goddess in paganism specifically. And for some reason, I got extremely infuriated in that moment. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. But Erica got to hear the
Rant.
the bluntness of it, because she called me right as I was in the middle of discovering this.
Because I always know. I know when you're in a state. Yeah.
Yeah, she always seems to sense it. And so I got to properly vent all of the fire vomit out in private, which is for the best. But it's interesting that the wild woman was left out of a concept created by a man. And, it's not to get into all of that dynamic, because feminine, masculine, it is all consciousness when you get down to it. But there is a dynamic of the wild woman kind of being pushed into the background for a very long time. So it's interesting. It's just an interesting thing to note that this book was about a goddess, was published and written by a man in 1948, when, how was the world in 1948? A very different dynamic between the feminine and the masculine. So, to lead into the
I think it goes way back further than that.
It does.
Yes.
I think it does. And it's interesting that there isn't, at least from what I found, there wasn't that much research or information available, and probably because it just wasn't recorded as much as it becomes in the more recent times, where everything can be online and it's easier to access it. So
we look through it in the cultural lens too, like our culture today as we understand it. We look back to the past and apply what we think we understand now. But back at whatever time period we're looking at, I mean, it's archaeologically, we try to be scientists with it, but we have our cultural notions about what is what. But back then, not really the case. They had different ideas about different things. We have to put ourselves in their place, in their shoes.
Wait, what if he didn't get the opportunity to experience what the wild woman was? What if on his timeline, in his life, it was all a, well, I think for me, it feels like a woman is fit into a box, and these are what she is expected from the opposite sex, and how she must fit into a role, a specific role here. And I don't like to put labels to it. I will say that up front. I don't, it's not about this or that. It's about bringing a balance and an understanding of, all those aspects of both male and female, feminine and masculine, in their divinity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's where the tension arises, is that it was and that's a good point, is like during the time he was writing this book, women were more kind of contained into these specific like labels and roles than we are now. And, but I think that in itself is part of the problem, is like, why did we have to go down that path? But we had to go down that path to get where we are today, is like the duality of seeing both sides of it. But what I wanted to really explore a little bit was, when you look at the goddess, take the triple out of it, just the goddess, and how she is very connected to the moon energy. She is nature. She is the human, the physical body. We are made of the earth that is made by the goddess. And so when you look at it that way and you see the phases of the moon, the depiction of the triple goddess, it shows I think it's the waxing moon, the waning moon, and the full moon, right? So the new moon phase, it's hard to depict that visually because it's no moon. Isn't really there. And that would be interesting if you add in that as a fourth phase, and then each phase of the moon kind of associates with a phase of the goddess. If you take maiden, mother, wild woman, crone, in whatever order, doesn't need to be in an order, but then it would be the maiden is the waxing moon. She is kind of rising. She's coming into her fullness. That leads into the full moon, which could be either the mother or the wild woman. You had, I think we were talking about that. I was seeing the mother as the full moon because it's like her fullness. It's when you're giving birth, you have the full body in pregnancy and that kind of stuff. But then also the full moon as the wild woman, because it encompasses all of the phases. The wild woman is all of the feminine. I think is the other part of that conversation. Okay, going through the phases though, then the waning moon is where I would put the wild woman. And then the new moon would be the crone, because that is, the void. The crone is that liminal space. And then if you like break it down into the four, so then you have like the phases of the woman's cycle. That also fits into the phases of the goddess. If you have the four with the moon. So the follicular phase, the ovulation, the luteal, and the menstrual. They all line up with a phase of the goddess when you include the wild woman into the conversation. And I just thought that was really fascinating. And then if you want to look at the seasons and the elements, those all line up as well, and in phases of 4 rather than 3. And then, of course, that question came up of like, well, then I think, because I was raised Catholic, I think of the Trinity of the Church. And I was like, well, that's interesting that it's the triple goddess with the Trinity, and they kind of mirror each other while the wild woman isn't in the conversation. And so that was all of the stuff that kind of just ran through my mind around the wild woman that I wanted to touch on, but I'm curious your guys' thoughts on all of this.
It looks like Renelle's wheels are spinning in her head.
It does.
I know that look, girl. I know that look.
Well, okay. So here are my thoughts on that, how I perceive it. Okay, first I would like to say that the wild woman she came from Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and it's her take on an integral missing piece of the feminine psyche, and her being a Jungian analyst. Also, they dubbed her a cantadora, which is a storyteller. So, for anyone who hasn't read the book, I recommend it to all divine feminine, even the masculine too. If you want to understand a feminine, go read that book. That's all I
It's a
have to
really
say.
good book.
It
Mhm.
is. It is such a good book. She breaks it down and helps you to find the missing pieces of, you know, I say psyche. And it's an archetype for me because, along my journey, I search for those missing pieces, all the time. Where am I? Who am I? Let me see if I can find it here in, this book or that book. And at that stage in my life, it really did open up my eyes. And I felt like for me, it was those missing pieces that were lost. It was the wild woman archetype. And I see her in my daughters. I see her in my son. Even it's a language that is unspoken. It is an almost sometimes unhinged, and that's okay. Sorry, not sorry. And in stages, I feel like a woman, a female, a feminine, whatever you want to label that, it's fine. I see it in certain stages of a person's life when you recognize it in yourself. First, you have to recognize it within yourself, and then you see it mirrored out in the world.
Yeah. I think that's a good point to bring up about the wild woman is that she is a little bit unhinged, and that's the point. Like, isn't that the whole reason why it hasn't been in the conversation for such a long time? Because a lot of people don't want to look at that. And a lot of women were kind of tried to fit into one of the other three as to make us more tameable and more acceptable, more like, even at the times where it was more of like submissive to the man. I mean, you go all the way back to Adam and Eve and that story and how that, made from his rib, it's like, really? She didn't have her own sovereignty in that story. But when you bring Lilith into the picture, it's a whole different story, like the truth of Lilith in that. And so I think the wild woman as untamed is what is coming back into the bodies of men and women. I mean, there's the wild man as well. It's like the wildness needs to be embraced now, especially because nature is wild. And that is our nature too. We shouldn't be told that it's not okay. And that's where I get fiery about it. It's like, don't tell me that. That's why we call this, don't tell me what the fuck to do, because I want to be in my natural state. And I'm not apologizing for it anymore. And I think so many of us feel that way, man or woman, or however you identify, you feel that in your rising in you now. And that's why we wanted to do this episode.
In my early years, I was a priestess in an actual, goddess temple, and we had a version of the wild woman, but a more grounded version, the queen, and it's almost the same, but where it intersects for me when we start talking about this is it's your own personal authority. And that's the crux for me, because I mean, you're talking about, Alicia, like with perimenopause being the wild woman era, and I can tell you, oh my goodness, like how unhinged do we feel when everything is winding down and it just feels out of control, and then how this isn't me, this is not how I normally behave, this is not how I normally feel, why am I reacting this way, I feel like I'm going crazy. Like, what's wrong? And then we are told, like, well, this finger wagging, like, well, just get a hold of yourself. But do I have to? Really? Can I embrace this and like just kind of control this fire and see where it takes me? See what is in the fire. And it was a good like 3-4 years there where I was like, I have no idea what's happening to me. I have no clue. It's chaotic, but at the same time, it was uncovering layers of accumulated social conditioning that I was shedding. It's like, why do I have to do that? Because I don't want to anymore. people didn't like it. People don't like it. But we're uppity, right? We're bucking
We
it.
talked about that in the priestess circle once, about the perimenopause being the shedding of those societal expectations. Like your physical body literally just starts burning it away, and that's what those hot flashes are about,
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wish I had one of your fans, Renelle, because I kind of need that right now. Like, it's hot.
Yeah, I know. We said we'd be a fiery episode, right?
Yeah.
Keep it with me.
Right. And the other part of the tradition was part of the authority, personal authority. It was not just personal authority, but what really grabs me is this personal spiritual authority. And that's a whole other level. I'm going to do what I need to do, what feels right. But then there's a spiritual higher level, which is really interesting to me. It's like claiming what works for you, what is spiritually right for you to do, and pursue in the world and share with the world. And really forging the path forward, redefining, no, that didn't work, but this really does. I really want to know more about this. I want to do more of this and less of that. And that's really where the wild woman is. It's like, for me, it's controlled fire. It's like you're controlling where you put your energy, your efforts, with no real, give no fucks attitude, right?
One thing that I wanted to include about Clarissa's work is that she wasn't the one who created the wild woman. She was in search of her, and then she said, "Oh, look at what this is. Guys, this is what's missing here. I have found it."
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, because the wild woman it is part of, when you think of like our ancestors, the ancient times, it was just a natural, I think that was the more natural way of expressing was that, right? Was the wildness, because everyone was so connected to nature and it was just the way it was. But shifting into, we talked about briefly at the beginning of the episode, the nodal shift happening. So in astrology, the nodes are shifting today. They were in Pisces, Virgo, North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo. And now they're shifting into the North Node in Aquarius, the South Node in Leo. And I forget what Renelle and I were talking about one day, and I decided to go in and do some research on how the nodes connect to the wild woman. And I just want to read what came through on that really briefly, and then we'll talk about whatever we want to. But it says, the wild woman question and the nodal shift are secretly the same conversation. Asking why was she left out of the goddess canon, and the answer is essentially the Leo Aquarius shift. The goddess who got to stay were the ones who could be, the goddesses who got to stay were the ones who could be enthroned. The radiant, the beautiful, adored, crowned, the feminine as spectacle, worshipped from below, palatable to the court. That's the Leo's register, the goddess who performs divinity and receives the adoration. The wild woman couldn't be enthroned because she can't be watched. She's the exile, the one outside the city walls, howling, ungovernable, belonging to the wilderness and the pack rather than the palace. And the exile, the outsider, the one cast out for refusing the acceptable form, that's Aquarius's native archetype. So a nodal shift from Leo to Aquarius is the collective withdrawing its allegiance from the enthroned goddess and going out past the walls to find the one that was banished. So I really liked that dynamic because I think Aquarius energy is very wild woman energy. She is the rebellious one. She's the rebel. She's like, I'm not going to do it like everybody else. the Aquarius being like, you're not going to tell me what to do. If you're going left, I'm going right, just for the sake of it, because I don't want to follow the rules. Is kind of the humor of it. But it makes sense that Leo energy is royalty. I mean, that's what it is. And that is more like the Empress. Like we'll get into it, the tarot. It is more of that like royal on the court performance goddess energy versus the wild woman.
Mhm. I immediately think of Lilith, like immediately. Like, what is it said? Something to the effect of she would not lie beneath Adam, and instead left. She would not be anything less than equal. She didn't claim to dominate over. She wanted equality, and then she's crucified for it. Not literally, like our Christian faith, but figuratively crucified and exiled. But she also chooses to exile herself in some sense. She's like, I'm not going to stay in this. I'm not going to stay here in this. And it's fascinating study. It's like I've gotten to study Lilith over the years a little closer, and I'm like, she's got a bad rep, like she needs to be looked at more honestly as a woman goddess archetype we can look up to as women to kind of I guess rediscover what we have been missing.
Mm-hmm. It's Lilith, it's Hecate, it's Kali Ma.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of them. All of those dark goddess, the dark goddess energy.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a video on Instagram the other day of this woman. She's the witch, something witch. She's very just very cheerful. And she was talking about when someone asks her, or when she tells someone, like they say, what do you do? And she actually answers, I'm a witch. She said, the first thing they asked me is, are you a dark witch or a white witch? And she was like, that dynamic only came about recently. She's like, I'm a witch that encompasses all of myself,
Mm-hmm.
the dark and the light, and she started getting into dark feminine energy, and I'm like, this woman speaks my language. I got to tune into her. But it's that same thing. It's like the dark feminine is the wild woman, is these goddess archetypes like Lilith, Hecate, Kali Ma,
and so many others, right?
Yeah, so many others. Yeah.
Well, can we talk about the name when we use the goddess? I know I brought that up earlier, because when I learned through my journey, which started with Sophia, goddess of wisdom, I fell in love, and she took me down a path that I am so grateful for. She opened my eyes, and I know that within me is goddess Sophia, and all of the archetypes that represent many aspects of the feminine energy, the me, you, all of you, and she's in all of us. And when I changed my name, my stage name, to Goddess Renelle, it's a quiet nod to the feminine aspect of, what lives inside of us. And when you don't, I understand that, there is a bad rap to it. You automatically say, oh, who do you think you are? I know who I am. Do you know who you are? That's the wild woman in me that says, yeah, no. Go on, go search it, and you come back and tell me, like I said earlier. But take the time, research all of this. Don't just assume, from your perspective, yes, you may have that, understanding, but why not take the time? Let's learn and talk about it together Don't assume something that you do not understand or have no knowledge of. And that is what Sophia did for me. And I have never looked back. I am always in search of the goddess, the many aspects of her. And she, is right there with me every single day. And I I switch that on, I invoke, and it's a strong word, but I invoke those goddesses every day, every waking state, even in my sleeping, dreaming state. I am doing the work, her work, what we came here to do.
I get it. I mean, invocation is a powerful thing and necessary on a daily basis now, especially because the goddess energy, however, whatever archetypes you resonate with in that light and protective energy and calling it in to help you, to protect you, to do the work that you're here to do is essential. I mean, I do that too on a daily basis. Every morning I wake up, every night I go to sleep. If I wake up in the night, I have dream troubles. If I wake up from a very troubling dream, that's the first thing I do is I'm like calling in that protection from what you would call the goddess. And we all interpret it through our lens of how we connect with her energy in that way. But you want to get into the tarot conversation of the wild woman?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yeah.
another book report. Let me get my notes.
Book reports are fun. Erica, book reports are fun.
They are. They're very informative. I do research, and I don't pretend to memorize anything because I am one tired mommy brain and one step away from a nap. So
right.
So,
and that's understandable.
That's the truth. Okay.
That's why research is amazing. You don't have to memorize it.
Yeah, I love research. It's fun. I enjoy it. I work in academics, so no wonder, right? Okay. So, all right. So, it was a few weeks back on our normal goddess hour. We were talking about this topic, which is where a lot of this content generated. And I was like, I know that we have representations of these 4 within the major arcana. And I was like, I know I could find this. I know there's just a run of sequence that will make it magical. And indeed, I have here on right in front of me here, for the people listening, use your imagination just a little bit. But the first 3 tarot cards, 1, 2, and 3 in the major arcana, go in the order of the Magician, the High Priestess, and the Empress. But before that, well, some people place 0 at the end, some at the beginning. In our case, it's going to be placed right before that. The Fool. And the Fool is not part of the numerical anything in the major arcana. It is the container card. And the Fool is the card that has elements of it. It's what represents in each and every major arcana card. It integrates in all of it. It is like the container. So this is the Fool, and these are all the cards within it, aspecting from it. It's quite but for the people watching, we have the Fool here, and as a dog nipping the heels of a youth about to go over a cliff over a very steep drop. But we have the Sun. He has a light back, like knapsack. He has a white rose. He's like ready to go. He's like, this is new. This is me. I'm doing what I want on my terms. Consequences be damned or not, depending on what he's doing. And it's just like a beautiful card. It's like, yeah, it's something new, or embracing something that is going to encompass something in your life that you're like, I'm going to take a chance on this, and I know what I'm doing. May not work out okay. Maybe it will. It's great. This is on my terms. And that's what's really important there. But the other 3, so the wild woman for us when we talk about was the Fool. But the other 3, magician, it is the magician, literally, wand up in the air, feet on the ground planted, but you see there it's also his other hand is pointing down towards the earth for grounding, and he has all his 4 elemental tools on the table, and he is a manifester. But think about it, I think this as the maiden. And the maiden, and she's the manifester. She has a new young energy to bring her desires out into the world and make it happen. She's not saddled down by motherhood. She's not saddled down by old ancient crone wisdom. The wild woman streak is strong. It's like, it's like there's so much she's like the word I would like to use it for, the creatrix of her destiny. And I was like, yes, because she has her eyes on the future, and she's like, this is what I want to do. And putting this card up again, this the wand in the air, it's her act of putting it out there. This grounding is saying, I know what I want, and I'm going to pull from the earth and all my resources to do it, which I think is beautiful. And the maiden is just like, just starting off in life, or it's a new maiden energy, like starting something new, and it goes right back to the full wild woman. So it's beautiful. Now, it's a little out of order just because of the way tarot is. The Empress is 3 and High Priestess is 2, but if we were to go Maiden, Mother, Crone, I'll touch on the Mother next, and that's the Empress. And we had to kind of tease this one. And it's a luxurious queen on her throne in the wilderness, all abundance around her. She is very relaxed. She is of the earth and love, beauty, and all these things. But she is the mother and the great mother. And she's the nurturer, more of the physical realm. She's really just gorgeous. I love this card. This is manifesting, like what the magician wants to manifest. The Empress literally is the manifester. It comes out of her pores. She's like effortless. Of course it's here. I made it come. And she's also the mother in the way that she births things. She's fertility. Was interesting, for those who can see it, she wears a crown. It has like 12 stars. I guess I wouldn't quite call it a constellation. And that represents the 12 zodiacal signs. And so she also represents higher cosmic order, which is beautiful. It's like, she's caring for her family, the land. She's Gaia. It's all encompassing mother support. And she also represented by the planet Venus, which I think is lovely. So she's number 3. If we were to go in order here, and this one really got me. I was like, because I am just like, I love the High Priestess card so much. It's one of my favorite cards. There's a lot of symbolism in here, but she's on a throne in between 2 columns, and she has kind of a tapestry behind her with blooming fruits and pomegranates, and that connects her to definitely to underworld and inner world. If you think of Persephone eating the pomegranate with Hades, there's a lot there. She's the secret keeper of ancient wisdom. She is the crone. Specifically for my notes, which I love, the feminine wisdom, life, death, and spiritual rebirth. So she is the one to look at her younger generations, her granddaughters, her women, her daughters, her family, anything that she touches. She understands life, death, and spiritual rebirth, and she is like the one people go to. Like, no, this is the way, the ancient ways. She's the one who remembers. She's keeper of mysteries, the threshold of the veil, and that's the void you're talking about. The conscious/unconscious duality, which is here, conscious, subconscious. Some people think that kind of, that's her gateway, and she guards it. She's a secret keeper of that realm. You kind of have to go through her. And her, she also has a triple moon crown, which is beautiful. And again, the triple, right? Because at the time when these cards were drawn, it was early 1900s. The triple goddess or anything triple, that was already there. It's inner knowing over external world. And I'm going to harken back to our first episode, the anti-guru, because she is the one who's receptive and reflective to truth revealing itself. And we had talked previously about meeting someone where they're at instead of telling them what to do. Being reflective, being the mirror. And she is that. She is the one with the ancient wisdom saying, I hear you. This is what I see. So it's lovely. Most importantly, she's the spiritual mother of all, and she's the great mother. Some people think that the Empress is the great mother, but really it's the high priestess. And she guards the hidden generational magic in our bloodlines and our ancient lineage. And she does so with perfect love and trust. And she's the space in between of the unseen. I mean, it's poetic to me. It's like, yes, high priestess energy all the way for me. Like I was always striving towards that. And I always feel like I sort of fail all the time, but I think no one kind of really strive to it. But it's like a spiritual guidance that like, I would like to try to embrace that more. That ancient wisdom walking with us to remember that we have the ancient wisdom, even if we don't have the words for it right now, wherever we are in our life. It's like an undercurrent of like, there's something more to all this. The mother has more to say. The crone has more to say. The magician has more to say. The maiden. And we embrace, and it's, as I understand, yeah, there's phases. And they say, oh, there's age groups. No. I guess you could put it to a period of our life, but I think we also have the ability to embrace these energies at any point in our life. We want to be like the crone and to remember ancient wisdom. We want to have the young energy again of the maiden, even though we're in our empress stage. We are the mother caring for everyone. But among all of that, the fool or the wild woman supports all of that. The fool is apparent in the energy of the maiden. The fool is, or the wild woman is apparent in our empress, giving the mother strength to remember her own authority in her life, to follow what's right for our wants, needs, desires, our community, doing the right thing, and what feels like she needs to do to protect her kin, all these motherly things. Then the high priestess, the wild woman is like, I'm looking forward to my later crone years, because I'm like, I can't wait to, like, I'm already at the give no fuck stage. Like, I'm like, I don't care. Like, don't tell me like what to do. The crone does not care for these things. She understands how it is, how it works for her, how it works for to support her generational lines, the ones after her, and to pass down the wisdom and live the wisdom. So that was a lot all at once. That's my book report. And thoughts, reflections.
I instantly pick up on with the Fool being the 0 card, and that's what would be the Wild Woman, is reflective of how we were talking earlier, if the full moon represented the Wild Woman, because 0 with the full moon, they're both like that full circle.
Yeah.
Encompassing all.
Mm-hmm. It's a container for all, right? Renelle, I know you have thoughts. I see the face.
No. I'm listening, absorbing. I love, the perspective. We look for those missing pieces in the systems, in the books and the cards, and, how we relate to them is something that is necessary for, excavating and finding, those lost pieces. I have to say this, though. How I know that you, specifically, Erica, you have had many years of study on the tarot system. And I would like to know if you look at all of the cards, how many of them carry that feminine energy? How many?
I have to get you an exact number, but there are
versus
yeah.
masculine energy versus masculine.
I don't know the number offhand. It's hard to say, but there are definite like they're the obvious ones, like the quartz. I mean, there's 16 there, and half are female, half are male, right? Kings, queens, princess, or page, or knights are always, so sons, daughters. Within the major arcana, there are some cards that definitely hold the feminine, I guess, mystique, the energy, like the Empress, the High Priestess, the Magician. I mean, it's shown as a male, the Fool. What I didn't say earlier about the Fool, which actually it touches on the gender part a little bit. I have it up here. It's a youth, not a man, but he's rather androgynous. And for me, I mean, that's just my personal, it doesn't really have a gender associated to it that I've ever picked up on. And I like the androgyny of it, where the container does not have a clear gender. It's a container, right? But the wild woman fits in there. It's just like your one's own authority fitting into our four. And I kind of like that.
Well, so I guess for me, it's more about the overall feeling of that system, because there is an undercurrent here within what we're talking about. And that is something missing within these systems, and we don't talk about it. And it is something that is like, I sense that in order for us to bring balance, then we must talk about where it is missing.
And it is missing. There's a book I have, The Complete New Tarot, that I tried to tear that apart to reorder it to the original structure, which as a troublemaker, I enjoyed immensely. But one of the things was how when the Roman Catholic Church era, started to realize that the tarot was too powerful. There's too much feminine power. There's too much this, too much that. They started to consolidate cards, hiding one card under another. Pope, Popess, they had different names. And the feminine was hidden and put under other guises. And they even took away cards that were too powerful. And one of them was the divine, masculine and feminine, Juno and Jupiter. And they hid that. So you are absolutely right. They did. It is unbalanced at that time. It's the Trinity. It's the Catholic Church. They're seeking to, I guess, control the masses in a way. And there's no hiding that with the church's authority. So yes, it was hidden very purposefully. And to restore that, we have to look deeper, going back and back and back. Even so, there are a lot of white men in the centuries back looking at these mysteries, and the women's mysteries are kind of not acknowledged properly. And that's where we have to look at with fresh eyes and go, wait a minute. Where did this really come from? What's really underneath all of this? And then boom, that happens. The feminine, I still hooked on that word. The feminine mystique of it all comes to life. And you're like, wait, okay, the matriarchal origins of our culture before patriarchy really came in shine through a little more when you strip away some of the symbolism as newer and just look at the older symbolism that was still there. So really interesting stuff, though. Like the deeper I go with this stuff, it's just the deeper in history I go, and the more you see the patriarchy's influence on the tarot as it is accepted today.
Okay, so I do want to be clear about something. I'm not trying to say that it's one versus the other. All I'm trying to say is why was it stricken from our history? We're only given just small pieces. And I do understand that as consciousness evolves, then we will look back into history and say, oh, well, this is where it is. This is where we can find it here. Let's bring it back into the light so that we can say, but look, this is very important. You want to understand where we are going, which I don't think we should. I think it just blinds us from being in the moment and bringing meaning into, how we operate as individuals and as a whole. The only way that we can possibly do that is if we bring it into balance. Say, hey, there's a huge part that is missing here. It is being able to see the divine feminine in all her aspects. That's just my thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And a lot of that history is buried in misunderstood archaeology from centuries past. There is buried under culture that got shifted by newer cultural shifts. And I mean, I think I shared with you ladies this morning, I'm like, the archaeological evidence of the divine feminine is being found, of the wild woman is being found. It's like, oh, a woman is a warrior. No. Like, yes. So, bucking our societal lens of what we understand to be now was not necessarily what it was then. And we have to kind of turn that off and go, no, actually culture was maybe more like this. And it's, when we can strip that away and kind of try to look at it, open eyes, take away the patriarchal layer of it, and like it kind of becomes more known, you can understand it better, or hope to, best we can. I just wish there's more archaeological evidence, more written texts besides like the Romans and the Greeks, which was already patriarchal. So, it's a bit of a mystery, right?
There's Sumerian texts too.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like cuneiform and other Egyptian was also patriarchal, but not as bad as it now. So it's problematic wherever you go. There's always something, but you go back and back and back, and you just land at matriarchal societies in general, and a different time and a different way of living.
I think that's where the intuitive nature and trusting our intuitive knowings that are rising within us now, to know that that was the truth, even if there is no written proof of it. And that's the hardest part, I think, for a lot of people right now is, like, I've had people try to do, I just know. Well, where's the proof? How do you know that? And they want to question me. And I'm just like, well, I don't have the proof. I just feel it as truth in my body. And, that is, and I got my degree in anthropology. I studied archaeology and all of that stuff because it fascinated me. And there is, even then, I look back on that and think of like, how much of the written word can we even trust? That's where my mind goes.
Well, it's true.
Is it even that, like, who were these archaeologists at the digs and what are they really logging? They could have easily just covered things up, and
they had their own bias, their own cultural lens at the time.
That too. And like, and I think that's where that article you shared with us this morning, Erica, was saying. It's like, now that we are in a consciousness where we are willing to look at the absence of the wild woman, specifically for our conversation, it's like all of a sudden the evidence is showing up because now our focus has shifted to that. We can now see it. Whereas before it was so much of that patriarchal in control. That's all that was showing up. But now a lot of the men and women are stepping into their divine embodiment and being like, wait a second, but what about this thing? This thing showed up over here? And now people are questioning it. And that article, I didn't read all of it, but I skimmed some of it, is like a beautiful expression of that archaeology does have the proof there. It just, we didn't have the eyes to see it yet. And now we're starting to.
I'll put a link to the article in our show notes, so if anyone's interested, they can read it. It's here in Stepstack. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's like, because I'm the armchair archaeologist. I've watched every documentary on every ancient culture that I can get my hands on, and what just continually amazes me is like the worldview of one society, and it gets overstepped by the new worldview, just over and over again in every region. And then we usually get the writings, at least in the Greco-Roman era, like the writings about the civilization that they toppled, are usually painted in a more favorable light towards the one who did the toppling. So if we're basing our archaeological understanding of these old societies, these matriarchal societies, whoever the little guy was, it's definitely skewed. And so how much of that skewed has become historical fact, as much as one can be? But we don't have written records for the other one necessarily. So it's trust it with a grain of salt, I guess, like there's hints in there, what the truth might be, like women are in charge. Oh, heathens. It's like, no, they're just a matriarchal society. It's just, a threat, so it's just going back and back and looking further back and further back. It's just like, it opens your eyes, like what could have been, what used to be, what could be in the future if we make some changes and recognize it for what it was.
Yeah. I think that's what so many of, especially the women, and a lot of more men are I see coming forward too in the work, but being like the cycle breaker, being the one to return and reconnect with the lineage, the lineages that were forgotten, but the stories were still passed down verbally. They just weren't written. And so it's like remembering, reconnecting with that through just the energetic work, I think, is a big part of it. But I know we've gone like way over time. We could wrap up the episode, but this was an amazing conversation. If you guys are enjoying this, you can follow the thread with the links below the episode wherever you're listening or watching. There'll be links to our individual Substacks if you want to connect with us individually, and links to YouTube, Substack, all the places you can watch if you prefer to watch somewhere or listen somewhere else. But that's it for this episode, unless you guys have anything to add.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.